Hello and welcome everybody to this episode of the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast. And I'm here today with Colleen, per usual.
Hello.
And we're here today with friend, longtime colleague, and just all around beautiful person, Judith Maxey.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you here and be in circle with you today. So just a few announcements for us. We have Animal Reiki classes coming up. So Animal Reiki 1 and 2, Animal Reiki Master here in August. And then Colleen has a Human Reiki 1 and 2 coming up. I think when this is released, it'll probably be within the next week or so. So check that out on our calendar at reikilifestyle.com. Colleen and I will also be heading to the Sedona Reiki Retreat soon here at the end of the month. And then Colleen, do you want to just talk about your 7-day in Hawaii with William?
Right. Oh, yeah. William Rand and I are teaching together in Hana, Hawaii in November with a 7-day Corona Reiki Master class. And, we've done this a couple of times before, and it's just an amazing connection with the earth and the island and the waters and the life in the waters. So we spend the time with, of course, the Corona Reiki training, but also spending time in Hana, Hawaii, which is on the island of Maui, in case anybody isn't familiar. And it's very much in the rural area. So anyway, that's coming up in November. You can look at reiki.org for that information.
Awesome. And then just the other things, always go check out our website. We have free resources. You all are listening to the podcast, so we have a podcast. But you're also welcome to join our distance Reiki share on every Tuesday morning. We do it every Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Again, go to Reiki Lifestyle. And then just the last thing is join us on social media. I am at Robyn Benelli Reiki on Facebook and Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram, so I post to my stories a lot, so you can go find me there. And Colleen is at Reiki Lifestyle Official. Okay, that's good for the announcements. I want to get to Judith. Judith Maxey is the owner of Almus Energy Medicine in Portland, Oregon. She is a Usui Holy Fire Reiki Master Teacher and mentor, a Shamanic Practitioner, and an essential oils specialist. Judith's journey into alternative and traditional healing practices began while pursuing a master's degree in applied anthropology, exploring the cultural roots of healing. Following her academic career, she began training in a variety of energy medicine techniques, including Reiki, core shamanism, and chakra healing. An energy medicine practitioner for over 15 years, she offers one-on-one sessions, Reiki trainings, and specialty classes, a Reiki mentorship program, and online courses through her essential oils business, Plant Speak Courses. She has been featured on a variety of podcasts and regularly presents teachings in the essential oils communities. Judith's passion is to help individuals remember their own innate wisdom, guided by love and compassion for humanity. She strives to rekindle the world of the unseen as common practice in our modern world. I like that line. I'm going to read it again. She strives to rekindle the world of the unseen as common practice in our modern world. That's really beautiful. What's really interesting is that we just had a podcast with Graciela, and she said the world of the unseen too. And it caught my attention at that moment of like, what a great term. And I love that it's now showing up again. Really beautiful.
Nice.
As spiritual activist, her mission is to provide deep personal healings and tools and practices to illuminate our oneness with each other and this earth during these extraordinary times. She can be reached at almusreiki.com, and Almus is ALMUS Reiki.com. She also has her Plant Speak Courses.com. And then she's on Instagram as Plant Speak, Facebook as gypsy.jude.9. And her email is judith.maxey, is MAXEY @gmail.com. All of that's going to be in the show notes, so you can go look at all of her details there and find her on her websites. And I'm sure all of your stuff is linked to your Almus Reiki as well, Judith.
Yeah, you can get all of that information on my main website. Thanks.
Awesome.
She's in Portland, Oregon.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank
We're so
you
glad to
so
have you.
much.
Yes, we are.
Really, I just get so happy thinking of a conversation with you two on this beautiful Friday. So thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. And just all of the things that you do. I know that you and I find a connection through the plants. You know, you do such great teachings around the plants. And I always just love to see everything that you, I mean, I know all of your offerings, but that's one that I always am really I just love what you say about it, what you do with it, and all of this, that deep heart work that you do with the plants and your plant work. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, Reiki, how all of that came to be. So why don't you tell us about that? We'll start there.
Perfect. You know, it's kind of funny because I feel like Reiki is the foundation for everything that I'm offering in all realms. So I'd love to start with my Reiki journey.
Perfect.
And it makes me laugh because it's the same Reiki journey. It's the same situation that we all hear in our classes, that Reiki just came to me. I don't know. Reiki searches people out. You become aligned, and it was just that way for me. And I love hearing the stories in my own classes, the different versions of that for everyone. It's so common. So I was a young mom and, struggling with the stresses of that, little past family trauma. And so I knew that something needed to shift. And all of a sudden, Reiki was everywhere. Just how that happens. You've heard it 100 times, right? Had never even heard of Reiki. And then all of a sudden, I would be walking by people in a cafe and they'd be talking about Reiki, or there would be a Reiki posting, or it was just everywhere all of a sudden. So I was curious. And then the last straw for me was I had my young children. We were walking into the library. We got to our place. I turned my head and there was a Reiki book right at eye level. And I said, okay, okay, spirit.
I hear you.
I get it. What is this Reiki? And as it happened, there was another parent at the school where my kids were at that was giving a Reiki class the next month. And that's how it all started. And I can remember that my husband said, are you sure you want to do this? You don't even know anything about it. Why don't you do a session? And of course I did. And I can still remember that first introduction to Reiki, the feeling, the golden light in my mind's eye, the feeling of it. And I knew right then, oh, this is for me, and here I am 15 plus years later. So I took those first 2 classes with someone who was a little more of a traditionalist and worked on myself and my family and my friends. And then Colleen, I can't even remember how I ended up in your direction. I'm going to say spirit guided me there too. And that's when it took a different turn. I thank you so much for really being such a guiding light in the professional world of Reiki. So I took my master's class with you, mini master's class, Karuna. You really opened that door into the feasibility of making this my work. So much gratitude.
Well, I love that. And I love the integration that you have found about your way with it, working with the plants and the other work that you do.
Yeah. But it was, it was a solid foundation. And I wanted to mention, I was thinking about this last night as I thought about our connection and our conversation today, that some of the most profound meditations, Reiki meditations and journeys that I've done have been in your classes. And you hold space for that so beautifully. And the people that I met in your classes over 10 years ago are still a part of my practice. I still rely on them. I had my first interaction with an ancestor who guides me in my work today, walking over the bridge in a meditation with you. So those were really foundational pieces. So on a personal healing level, that's where I started to go. And then on a professional level, the ICRT is just, again, I thank you and William for giving the world that opportunity to see Reiki and use Reiki in that way.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. And so then I knew it wanted to be a part of my world in a different way. I wanted to go out and offer sessions. But I also at that time was very interested in medical Reiki. So I volunteered at Compass Oncology with the Northwest Reiki Association. And again, all along the way, I can look back and see that I was learning. I was healing and learning and prepping to be where I am today. And so working in those situations, volunteering, I don't know if you've talked about this on your podcast before, but it was a couple days a week going into a chemo lab and volunteering and giving people Reiki. And so, I had heard things in your class probably about stepping out of the way, allowing that light to run through you, allowing yourself to be a clear channel. But I often talk about in my classes this one very unique experience that it was a game shifter for me. And that was, I traditionally didn't see the same person over and over in that volunteer position, but there happened to be this one woman that I did. And so I got attached to her. And probably about the third or fourth time I went in to give Reiki, and all of my attachments and all of my desire and all of my connection to her were right there, front and center. And as a young practitioner, I remember thinking, what's wrong? I don't feel it. I don't feel the Reiki going through me. I can tell that it's not flowing. And I remembered, step out of the way, even your loving thoughts. And I took my love and care for her and my desire for her to feel better, and I put it out in a little box out in the parking lot. And immediately, poof, I can feel the Reiki strengthen. And so I go on to teach that with that story that I'm pretty sure the ideas came from your first classes about stepping out of the way, allowing yourself to be a clear channel for that. So that part of my journey was also filled with a lot of learning. And then it, as my kids got older, I started my practice. But the next big point for me in my Reiki journey was shamanism. I know we all share the Light Song community, the School of 21st Century Shamanism and Energy Medicine. And that was the next step, the next big step of working with Reiki and combining that. And I'll tell you that I had a hard time weaving those modalities. They seem very different at first. And then, of course, after a while, they seem like they're just meant to be together. And that's where my practice really took off, when I could combine that and start doing Reiki journeying. And it was the combination of those two things also that really helped me understand Reiki in a deeper way. And that's actually where the plants came in, that there was this beautiful confluence of my Reiki practice maturing, doing core shamanism, and the plants came in. And so there was this moment of bringing all of those together for my clients that has led me to this point today. So a beautiful journey with so many teachers that I feel so grateful for, all of my classes with you. I've been so fortunate along the way that I have teachers who can help me see this as a profession, a gift to the world, and my own healing. So I really just want to thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. I love that you, in the bio, talking about it as your spiritual activism also.
Yeah. I talk about that a lot in the plant speak work with the essential oils, the sort of plant medicine, the spirits of the plant, sort of jumping ahead a little bit here, but there came a time when I thought, what am I doing with my work? What do I want to give to the world? How do I want to contribute? And it's much the same way with Reiki, all my work with Reiki. I would like to offer, I think this is my path. It's actually somewhere in my astrological chart, or all the, my numbers, all the things. What's going to help us? What will help humanity? How can we save this beautiful earth. And I think it starts with what is at the core of Reiki, and that's getting to know yourself and oneness. And for me, at the heart of all the things that I do is coming to your true self, which is at the core of Reiki. And in my plant work with this, primarily with the essential oils, I start off talking about remembering your gifts, remembering yourself, honoring all the folks, as you said in that meditation beforehand, Colleen, honoring all the folks who have done this through the hundreds of years, all the traditions all around the world, some of which exist strongly now, but here in where we live, not so much anymore. And that's bringing back the knowledge and the existence of your own light. Thank you, Reiki. And having that help you remember who you are and your capacity to work in the unseen. And so when I work with the plants, it's really about first cultivating that within yourself, opening up those possibilities, reminding yourself. It's a process of remembering that everyone has the ability to open up. You asked in a question, how do Reiki and essential oils, how do they work together? And it's just that. When we're in a Reiki state, we are open. We connect to oneness. And in that state, you can connect to the spirit and the intelligence of the plants. And it's the unseen world. We're so fortunate now to have all this scientific knowledge, the constituents, the chemistry, all these thousands of documented reasons why we should work with plants. But there's something even deeper for me, and I think which is critical to our existence and at the core of the spiritual activism. And that's working with the intelligence of the plant, the spirit of the plant, and that wisdom. And much like Reiki, they're so loving. Yeah. They're so loving and kind. And
I think that they'd admonish us, and it's actually the opposite. But when you were saying about the intelligence, what I saw was just like that mycelium, that root network underneath the mycelium, under the plants and under the mushrooms and under the earth, and that they're connected, right? They're all connected. It's all just this underground network that we're finding. I mean, I know many people in many cultures, like you said, there's many cultures that have not that this is how they live. They live with it, this knowledge, and they're helping us to remember in this Western culture. They're helping us to remember it, that because we've forgotten.
Exactly.
And just now that we are finding all of this out, about these mycelium networks and this root network. And I know many people have known this for a lot of years, but it's becoming mainstream now. That's the other thing. It's like we're able to know about it and talk about it. And there's documentaries, and people are sharing this knowledge and the beauty of all of this as well, that the plants have and are teaching us.
And I don't think it's any coincidence. because we need to remember that now more than ever. I mean, I really see this type of work, the deep healing work, the connecting in with the plants, and I see it in what you're doing with animal Reiki. It's very much the same thing. It's you open up to your capacities and you connect with a living being in a deeply spiritual and respectful way. That changes you, that changes the world, that changes your connection. You will respect and tend to animals in a different way. I can imagine that people that take the animal Reiki courses, it's a massive shift in their life. And it's the same thing working with the plants. I always think, you can't do a meditation. You can't get in a Reiki state and be in meditation with the plant spirit without it affecting how you believe about the earth and how you care for this earth, and you will see the plants in a different way. A little crazy sounding, but it is more mainstream now, so I can say it on this platform, I know. But once you start talking to the plants, once you start having those conversations and you gather that wisdom and share your life and your hearts, you will have a different feeling about this earth. And I think that we need that too. We've forgotten that. We've forgotten that we are one with this earth. And so that, to answer a really long-winded way of answering what is spiritual activism, that's what I feel like my activism is. You know, there are people that go out and canvas, there are environmental lawyers, there's all sorts of activism going on. And in this spiritual realm, I feel like my activist role is to help people help remember their own light, you know, thank you, Reiki, and help them open up to other living things on this earth. So,
and as far as woo-woo stuff, there is not really anything that's off limits on this podcast.
I forgot where I was for a second.
We talk about it. We know our listeners want to hear about it and talk about it. Like, oh, okay. Talking to the plants, Judith, is very on the normal end of our weirdometer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And if you're not talking to the plants, then you need to get on for
yeah.
Like me.
Yeah. So, you know, we had talked about why Reiki and essential oils. And when I say essential oils, the essential oils are a beautiful way to have plant spirit in your hand, and adding the aromatic benefit just deepens the practice. Again, if you want to geek out, you know, the aroma goes through your limbic system and changes things hormonally in your memory. You know, there's all that. But there's also the spirit of that plant. And that's what I believe that we should be working with. Yeah. So talking to those plants, they've been like allies for me. You know, I consider each Reiki symbol an ally. I have my own allies, my Reiki Master ally, and then each of the plants, you know, can become a beautiful ally that you can have conversation with. I was thinking, Colleen, you were the first one to introduce me to talking to the spirit of your business. And so talking to the spirit of each of the plants is just extraordinary. So when I talk about working with essential oils, I mean just all plants. It's a benefit to have the essential oil, and my work has been guided towards the essential oil community, but it's plants in general. You know, most people that take the course that I created on Plant Speak, by the end, they'll realize, actually, I don't really even need this essential oil with me. But it's a great boost when you're starting to have it in front of you. But it's not really even necessary, because we are dealing with, like we were talking about before, the unseen, the spirit of the plant, the intelligence. So again, much like Reiki, I feel like once we can tap into that, once you can get into that Reiki state, you can open up to that. Yeah.
Well, tell us more about your story, how you got into plants, and you know what you're teaching in the Plant Speak, and what that's, you know, a little more detailed about it. Like,
sure, I'd love to share that.
Yeah.
So really, my entry into the essential oil world and working with the plants in this way was a very classic introduction to an essential oils company. You know, a dear friend said, "Hey, why don't you come smell all these oils?" And so we were sharing oils, and much like people, there were just way too many oils at the same time, and I got overloaded. You know, when you're really super sensitive, like many of us are, it was like having a million really intense personalities all in the same room, smelling one, smelling another. And I kind of got overloaded, and I said, well, you know, I really liked this one. It's called Balance. I'll just take a little bit of that. And I backed away from the idea of essential oils. But it continues to be a beautiful blend called Balance, and it has frankincense, which brings in the spiritual, the tree wisdom, hoe leaf and spruce, and the flower essences. And so what a beautiful combination, right? That you get this sacredness from frankincense and the trees and the flowers. And so I started using it in my Reiki sessions. And when I smelled it the first time, I thought, oh my gosh, this smells like, this is an aromatic version of what you feel like after a Reiki treatment. You know, that no matter what happens, you feel a balance, and you feel like you can remember your sacredness. So I started using this one blend at the end of every Reiki session. And it was beautiful and people loved it. And so I would say, smell this and really integrate what you're feeling so that when you go home, you can smell that again and it will help you conjure up this feeling that you've had after the session. And I used that one blend. I didn't get into anything else for 2 years, and I would travel across the town to go play retail price for this one thing. And that was my introduction, and that's where I had it for a long time. And then a friend of mine said, that's really ridiculous. You should just, become a part of this essential oils community. And that's where I said, okay, my clients love it. I'll do that. And that's where I started experimenting with all these different individual single plant friends that I, was like, oh my gosh, they each have their own energy. But like I was saying, it came at the time where my Reiki practice was expanding and I was doing a lot of Reiki journey, and I had allies. And one of my allies in my core shamanism training was a regalia spirit who was really showing me consciousness and the spirit of shamanism, the spirit of Reiki. And it was a very nebulous sort of energy at first. And then it became more of an ally, a concrete person I could talk to. But it was a confluence of all of those things happening in my life. So I was very deeply and excitedly for, a new era in my work world, opening up, really expanding, being able to see the living part of a drop of water, being able to be out near the ocean and connect in a different way. And at the same time, I started experimenting with these oils, with these plants. And before I knew it, in my Reiki sessions, I would be working with someone and I would just get a whiff. Like I'd never been, I can't remember the word, clairsentient, clairvoyant,
Salient or not salient? Salient?
No.
Nope. Is it clairgustance or is that?
Yes.
That's tasting, isn't that?
Let's look at our little chart and see.
I think it's salient is the smelling.
You gonna look it up, Colleen?
I'm gonna, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you'd think we would know this off the top of our head.
Well, the interesting thing is it had never been part of my practice. And a lot of people don't have that as one of their psychic.
It's salient.
It is salient.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden in my Reiki practice, these smells would come in, like magnolia. Oh my gosh, do I even know what magnolia is? Rosemary. And so I would bring in the oil and work with my clients with it. And this was at the very beginning in my Reiki sessions. And then I started doing a little research about how would these oils be used? If I was a trained aromatherapist, what would these be using? What would they be offering on a scientific level? And lo and behold, they were perfect for every client. So I thought, oh my gosh, I have to expand this. So then I started doing journeys to each of the plants and the world just opened up. And, that's where I really became someone who occasionally talked to plants to, I think there was a time in my life where I may have talked to plants more than I talked to people. There was definitely one.
It was a glorious time.
yeah. And then it resurged again recently for the COVID. Yeah. But, that's how they came into my life. And then how did I get to plant speak and this new work with the oils? That's a funny story. So it was the doTERRA community, but I wasn't a seller. I wasn't on the track to sell essential oils. I just wanted to use them. I just wanted to offer them to my clients and have an ally in each of them and explore their gifts and their intelligence, because the combination of Reiki and plant medicine, and then I'll speak a little bit later about then if you use them on specific acupressure points, it's just phenomenal.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you find those portals, those energetic portals on our physical body. So there I was in this essential oil community, kind of on my own little path. And I was going to one of the conventions. And you know how life works. There are little things that are dropping into your life and you're not really sure why. And I feel like that expands when you're in the Reiki, when you're working with Reiki, and then you become a little more open to noticing them, right? So there I was on a plane going to a convention, and I thought to myself, what am I doing? Why am I going to this? I'm not going to this isn't my line of work. What am I doing here? And so I started to do what I knew best, and I put on my drumming and did my Reiki journeying. And I'm sure everyone that's listening can relate. I know that you too can relate to this. Sometimes you step into a journey with a question, and before you can even ask the question in your mind, bam, you get an answer. And that was a little bit like this one. So my intention was to say, Spirit, why am I doing this? Why am I on this plane? I mean, I literally was like thousands of feet up in the air, halfway there. And bam, I felt the plant kingdom, not one particular plant, but the plant kingdom speaking to me. And all I heard, loud, resonating voice, get them to speak to us. I was like, okay, okay. And I stopped because I knew that's all I needed to hear. You know, sometimes there are those messages, they're just like a gong going off. They're just one loud TV infomercial kind of loud message. And I thought to myself, what does that even mean? What does it mean, get them to speak to us? And then I got off the plane and I got to that convention. And at one point I looked around and I saw thousands of people all gathered for essential oils. And with that eagle vision, I stepped back and I saw there are people of every walk of life here. There are religious people. There are very non-religious people. There are spiritual. There are young, old, every walk of life you can imagine in this convention hall. And it was in that moment I thought, I received that message. Get them to speak to us. It is my goal, and I said yes, to find a way to get this community to not just use the oils, use these plants in the way that they're accustomed, but to get them actually to speak to the plants. And that was the seed of Plant Speak. That was the seed of combining all my experience with Reiki, all of my client work, all of the essential oil training, and put together a program that basically is teaching people how to remember and then giving them very clear steps, just like we would in a Reiki meditation or a shamanic journey, how to respectfully go in and build those relationships. So the first course is called Build Relationships with Your Oils. And it all started right there with that crazy journey in the middle of the skies, somewhere between here and Salt Lake City.
It's eagle vision, right?
Yeah.
The ones.
Yeah. And you know, then so the activation for that course and the inspiration and then all of it coming together happened right around 2020. Mm. And so I created the course, and then it got shelved because there were a lot of things that have happened in the last few years on our planet, humanity, in my own personal life. And so I'm really just getting back to how can I bring this into my world, and we'll start doing some retreats very soon. But when I first started talking to you two about this podcast, I thought Reiki is at the core of everything I've done. And how does Reiki work with essential oils? You don't have to have a Reiki background. You don't have to have an essential oil background, but they're all venues. I think sometimes in all the trainings that we do, there's a commonality. They're all just different types of trainings, different ways to get there to that oneness, and to open ourselves up, open up our hearts and our minds and our souls, our divine minds to source, to consciousness, to togetherness. And I feel like our world right now needs that more than ever. We're coming out of, hopefully, that time of division. You know, we have had a lot of division, and this is one more modality to bring us together in unity. So really the work is about unity. Yeah. So then the course itself, I think you just said that you don't have to have Reiki, you don't have to have essential oils. You could have both if you, if you were called to that. So it is for the essential oils community as well as the Reiki community. The course that I have out now is for really everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I designed it for that community. In some ways, I felt like I made a commitment. Okay, plant kingdom, I hear you. And with all the various, you know, uncertainties of the world lately, that is one thing that has stayed completely constant for me. And that's the voice of the plant world. We're waiting. So that one of the courses that I have out now is specifically for that community, but I'll open it up to everyone. And I will this fall, probably in September, have an essential oils class for Reiki practitioners in particular. And that will focus on how might you bring essential oils into your practice, the spirit of the oil, and some of those physical points that you can do online as well. As we know, you can do everything through space and time. Yeah.
So, go ahead, Colleen.
I was just going to say, when they're speaking to you in that context, so working with Reiki, and I think of Reiki immediately as, you know, giving us that ability to connect and commune heart to heart with everything, and plants, you know, since we're speaking about plants. So when you are teaching people with Reiki, is it about, you know, how to connect on their own using Reiki with the plants? Is it talking about how they use the essential oils to enhance their Reiki sessions?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Probably all of the above.
Yeah. So I will have a couple different offerings for various people, but the Reiki for with essential oils will do just that. It will provide an opportunity for people to incorporate the plants. And you had asked me earlier, do I use certain essential oils with different symbols, or how do I integrate it? So here's an example of what will be in the course for Reiki practitioners. So for my sessions, I typically open up with an invocation. Obviously, the learning and the healing starts there. But after we set those intentions and bring in all of our guides and set that container, I will take out a little bit of frankincense. Frankincense has been used for, you know, hundreds of years in sacred ceremony. And so I will bring that in, and that's what I'll be teaching to when and how to bring in essential oils to a Reiki session. So I typically start bringing that in for its wisdom, for its sacredness, for its tree wisdom. And I offer a smell of that to the client, and then I put a little bit right behind the ears to give it the physicality. And really, I say to the client, allow your frequency to mingle with the frequency of this plant, and allow yourself to remember your own sacredness. And so that to me is a real shifter in the session right away, using that aroma, using that plant. And then I was thinking, what are some of the typical oils I would use in my Reiki sessions, and with symbols in particular. One that's been showing up to work with the distant symbol, Honshase Shonin, is lavender. And that's kind of curious because many people have a relationship with lavender. You've used lavender for various reasons, you know, as a relaxant or whatever it might be. Hold on. But about a year ago, lavender, the spirit of lavender in a Reiki journey, had a very strong message. And that was, I can help you relax. Humans have been using the properties of lavender, the wisdom of lavender for a long time. But now as humanity is stepping deeper into themselves and really looking at ancestral healing, dredging up those patterns that are holding humanity sort of captive, lavender said, use me to help find those tension points, not just your physical. So I have a meditation that I'm releasing at the end of July. It'll be on my website, free on my website, but starting with lavender to start releasing the physical tension, and then looking for those tension spots, those energetic spots that often are addressed in a Reiki session, of holding patterns. And then we go a little bit deeper into what those patterns might be, in your family line, or what some ancestral healing or imbalances that you are part of in an energetic line, how lavender might help you free those up as well. So in a session, I bring in Honshaze Shonin with lavender quite a bit, and they work in tandem, working through time and space. And so lavender is particularly helpful in this way to work on those ancestral wounds. So I bring them in oftentimes at the same time in a session, the spirit of lavender and the distance symbol. I mean, I bring it in the beginning anyway, but if we're working really pointed on a situation or something comes up in a session. And then for the mental and emotional symbol, Seheiki, I often bring in bergamot, which is a citrus oil, but it has a very similar energetic to Seheiki in its balancing, balancing that left and right hemisphere, balancing out the emotions on a physical, spiritual, emotional level. Bergamot has that same balancing property. And if you use it with a naturopath, you could be using it for hormones or emotional or anxiety, and it has the capacity to help you balance. I find working with it in a Reiki session is combined with Seheiki is just, it's like amplifying it. For me, the oils are a little bit like using the power symbol as we use it to amplify things. The oils become also a sort of amplification of what's happening in a Reiki session. They feed on each other. They amplify one another. They allow you to go deeper, and they offer such kind support. So I might use bergamot in that way if there seems like something should be balanced, if the client's body is asking for balance. And then in particular, I would take bergamot oil, a dab of it, and I would work on the Shenmen point, which is an acupressure point, which is often called spirit gate. And it too relieves anxiety, helps you become in balance. So now if you can imagine, you have Reiki, you have plant medicine, and you have a point that's been used to heal your spirit for hundreds of years. And so we'll sit in that position for 3 to 5 minutes. And then to amplify it even more, if it's something that's coming up in the session, I might have the client join in on that with some visualization. And that might look like going through their life or a special recent situation, maybe why they've come to the session, to gain their energy back. So bergamot for me is almost like an energy retriever also. It allows you to find balance because it helps you find your own energy. So in this combination of being in a Reiki state, all the container that we create, giving someone Reiki in this position, pressing there, and with bergamot, I might ask a client, okay, now in your mind, I want you to travel through this situation and see where you have given your energy, or maybe where your energy has been taken away. Work with a visual, see it, give it color or knowing. What are you knowing if you're not visual? And then I ask them to retrieve that energy themselves in their mind, but I ask them to move their hands and bring it back and place it in their heart. So that's one of the ways I would work with a symbol, an essential oil, and Reiki together. And it's just been really wonderful and potent type of medicine for people. And again, I feel like we're at that place where for me in my practice, it's not about just coming in and offering something. It's empowering that client and having them be a part of the session, not just receiving. So yeah, that's one of the many ways I would use essential oils with a symbol. Yeah. Can I add something here real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. I also want to say to everyone listening that they're powerful medicine. They're very strong. And that if you do start working with the essential oils, it's very important to get some training, even just basic level training. I wouldn't ever advocate for someone to bring essential oils into their Reiki practice without some education, knowing which plants are hot, which you shouldn't put on the skin, dilution. I'm a big fan, also an activist for this world. We don't need to be depleting our resources to create essential oils. So you can often dilute an oil to work with. And there are just regular safety practices. Bergamot in particular, it's photosensitive. So you'd never put essential oil neat on someone's skin and have them go out into the sun, because that would probably burn. So I'm a huge advocate of working with Reiki and essential oils, but I'm also an advocate of doing so mindfully. So I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
Well, it leads me to my next question a little bit is, what about, like you said, when you first started and that sensitivity to fragrance, the sensitivity, that piece of it. And so these are sensitive. So
yes,
talk a little bit about that.
Yep. It's funny, Robyn, thank you. When I was thinking about what's important to know, that was actually on my list and I forgot to say it. And that's that if you have a Reiki practice and you want to work with oils, that should actually go on your intake or your information, asking people right from the get-go if they're in person. But I will add that you can do all of this in a distance session, as you all know. But if you're working with them in person, to definitely ask if people are sensitive and to really encourage them. Some people may not know that they're sensitive to certain oils. So if I have a client for the first time and I'm introducing them, I won't do a bunch of oils to start. I might introduce just one or two. And, the other thing about essential oils, which I feel is in common with Reiki, is it's very unique. The plant frequencies meet you where you are, just like you see in a Reiki session. You can't determine, after doing it for a while, you can kind of have a good guess, but you can't determine what's going to happen with someone in a Reiki session. Just like you can't with essential oils. They meet. Reiki meets you, mingles with you, works synergistically with you, is an offering to you, and yet brings up your own light. And it's the same way with essential oils. They will work with you in the moment for that one person at that time. So I like to introduce them slowly, ask people if they're sensitive to essential oils, and then follow up and get their feedback from the various oils, and then help cultivate those relationships. But as you said, Robyn, it's important to know and to have that as a professional practice, to have it right out there. And even for some people, if you have a lot of essential oils in your personal office, in your private practice, it's important to have that on, because you might have someone who's very sensitive and then you want to remove them from your office. Even just having them capped can be too much for people. And what I was starting to say about individuality, each of the plants, since it does work on that individual basis, it might have one outcome for one person and something completely different. Like lavender for some people is incredibly relaxing, and yet for others, it can really agitate them and aggravate them and give them energy. I mean, I've definitely seen that happen. Same thing with an orange. We typically think of the essential oil, the citruses in general, as being uplifting. But you might have someone who, in a Reiki session, you introduce wild orange and it actually helps them ground. So I don't know how many times have I said this in the course of this conversation now, but really much like, in the same way as Reiki, we never know how it's going to meet you in that moment. Your body decides. And so it's the same thing working with the plants. I think that's one reason I love to work with them together, is there's so many similarities. And then working with them together has also really opened up my mind to those possibilities and to the individuality of each person, what they need in that moment, and the wisdom of both Reiki and the plants to meet that person. if we create that safe container and remind people of their sacredness and bring in all the support that we know how to do as practitioners, really such magic can happen when you bring in the plants. Yeah. Did that answer your question, Robyn? That was a really,
No, it
I have
did.
really
I would
long-winded answers.
No, it's not at all. I would imagine too that you would find that people, I love the consideration for the sensitivity, because definitely found that I don't think people do it on purpose, but there's not the awareness that some people are extremely sensitive, and that can vary. And then at the same time, also the awareness that maybe you're sensitive to synthetic fragrances, but you might not be to essential oil. So there's that side of it as well.
Absolutely.
I love the delicacy around the topic, but also the idea that maybe you're not as sensitive to them as some other things that you might be.
Right. And I think in that thought, Robyn, thank you, is also to really, if you're going to work with them in your practice, in your Reiki practice, make sure that they're quality, not adulterated. There are a lot of essential oils out there that they'd have other stuff in them, and they may not be listed. So make sure that if you bring them into your practice, that you get good, high quality, unadulterated oils. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah.
And how do you determine that as a person looking to add them? How do you know which are the good qualities and which not to get involved with?
Yeah, you want something that's third-party tested, for one. And I'm also going to have something on my list on my website. I'll have a list of some companies that I believe are trusted companies. I'll say typically the oils that you'll find at Target or Safeway or something like that, they're not the best. They're cheaper. They're a cheap dilution, even if they say they're 100%. If you had them tested in a scientific lab, you're not going to find the potency, and you will find other stuff in them. So I'm not saying go out and buy the highest price, but do your research on any oil company that tests and can commit to that unadulterated aspect. Yeah. And again, I'll have that on my website probably by the end of August. I will have a list if people want to check out that reference. And while I am aligned with the doTERRA community, because that's where the plants entered my life, I'm not asking you to only buy doTERRA, but they do have good quality oils. But there are many companies out there who now, again, no coincidence, I think the plants are speaking loud and clear. They're like, use us. We're going to come to you in many different ways. I don't think it's any coincidence, like you were saying, Robyn, that we know more about the trees, underground work, mycelium, intelligence. It's time. What our ancestors did intuitively, and we kind of hopped on the bandwagon of only being able to believe things scientifically, or if we could see it, we are getting back on the train of being able to work in that unseen and using the plant intelligence. And it's coming to us. It's exciting. It's coming to us in so many different ways. And like Robyn mentioned, it's coming mainstream. It's out there. So it's super exciting. Yeah.
Well, I really like the way you're talking about them. They're giving me such a different you're giving me a really different perspective, because for a while the essential oils in this community were just, people were just bathing in it. And as a very very sensitive to fragrances, some of it was really overwhelming. And for me, I connected it to the oil rather than the plant.
Yes.
So that's what I'm hearing in you, that for me is a really big shift and an openness to the awareness that the oil is just a delivery system of the plant.
Right.
And I hadn't really put that together before. I have to admit, I've had a level of resistance because of the overwhelm. And I am super fragrant sensitive.
Yeah, no, I am too. I'll tell you, there's a walking down a detergent aisle in a supermarket gives me a headache immediately. So I really have empathy and understanding for that. Colleen, thank you for mentioning that. I'll mention a few things, and that is, well, one, to be cognizant of that. And if I were working with you who has that ultra sensitivity, I might not even bring in the physical oil, but it doesn't mean that I can't work with the intelligence of that. And of course, that would be right up your alley, right?
Right.
So we can start speaking to the plant spirit, to gain information and to work with you. But if there's someone who's super sensitive, you don't have to have it, or you can use it in a very diluted form. I'm with you on, there was a time when it felt like essential oils were just in the air. So many people were bathing with them. Like, definitely, sometimes, less can be more here, people. I agree.
In the furniture and, it was like,
Yeah. But I do want to add here on that note that, this is, part of my work with the plants. And that is, what we're talking about here is the bombarding someone's senses.
Yeah.
And having that, resistance. But I often see that there can be a resistance to an oil, to a plant. And I always like to say, notice the resistance. That's information. Just like everything we do in our Reiki sessions is information. And sometimes people have, a reaction that's negative, and we notice that. It's the same thing with the plants. So notice what aroma repels you or brings up a resistance, and file that away just for knowledge. And if someone has a particularly strong adverse reaction or voices it, I will say, go back to that in a diluted form, because there may be a message in there. It may be pushing you in a direction you're not ready to go in. The gift, the intelligent, the frequency, the properties, whatever word you want to use, might be too much for you right now. Just like you might hold off in a session if someone feels kind of done, you might get that with a plant, with an aroma. So I say, come back to it and smell a little bit. Don't inhale it too deeply, but come back to it. Because my own personal experience, and definitely that of many clients, is that aroma that you resisted has a message or has a gift for you. Circle back to it. And 9 times out of 10, that's the medicine that helps people move through something. They just weren't ready, or it was too much. And so if someone goes home with an oil, I sounds kind of mean, but if someone has a real resistance, I'll send a little bit of oil home and say, just revisit this every now and then. And they'll come back and say, oh my gosh, one day I smelled that. I loved it. I'll say, yeah, you're ready for that medicine. Isn't it interesting? I have oils that I work with regularly that one day I smell them and I think, ew, yuck. Jasmine was that way for me. Like, oh, that's disgusting. That smells like my grandmother's nasty perfume, like, no, I can't even have that near me. But then I worked with Jasmine, and Jasmine taught me about trust. Jasmine is great for trust or sexual trauma or big, deep wounds. And I worked with that. I can't get enough of Jasmine now. I feel like its frequency has made shifts within me and is now a deep ally. And so now I love the smell. But I will tell you that if there's a day that I smell it and have that same, I catch myself and I think, what's going on? What's happening here? What's going on in your world? So they're potent medicine. They give us a lot to think about in all ways, whether you scrumptiously want to inhale or you're resistant. There's information in there from the plant and from your own body. That's another thing. It's not just about the plant wisdom. It's teaching people to, like we do as Reiki practitioners, find that wisdom within themselves and work with the plants in that way, to trust what your body is saying, to trust your reactions, to think about, to feel what's happening. It's a beautiful process to watch someone get familiar with essential oils. So they first smell them. This happens a lot with lemongrass, which I use quite frequently for cleansing or releasing or clearing energy. It's perfect for that. But sometimes the first smell of lemongrass clicks in your memories of Thai food, right? So they'll get that memory. They'll say, oh, their brain says, yummy Thai food. And so, especially with lemongrass, I will say, why don't you give this a smell? And I'll give it some time. You might have other memories that might conjure up other memories or feelings or emotions for you. But then the beauty happens is, okay, let all that happen. How beautiful. Thank you, beautiful bodies. Now smell this in a different way. Smell the depths of this plant. Ah, they say. And that's where I say, allow the frequency, open your body. I don't usually go into this right away. So they're in a Reiki state and they're a little more able to do that. They understand they're an energy body. Allow your energy to open up to the depths of this plant. And boom, that's where people have that shift. And it's so beautiful to watch, from just being something that you have a memory with. Oh, rose, that, reminds me of whatever, to aromatic. How does that make me feel? To really understanding the magic and the intelligence of a plant. And then you let it unfold. And then you allow that trusting, just as we would in a Reiki session. You present it and allow the body to respond in the way it is desiring to in that moment. So super fun.
Well, I honestly mean this, that I feel so much less resistant to it.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. And when you used the word bombardment,
yeah,
that was like, there's the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It was, that was, that's the resistance. And so now I can actually work with this, and the idea of it being the plant that I'm connecting with is huge.
Yes.
And probably really an area that I haven't done a lot with. I do that as I walk on my walks, and I appreciate and I love it.
Yeah.
But really connecting in the level you're describing is so fascinating and intriguing.
Yeah, it is. And it's potent. Plant spirit shamanism has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, this is a version. If you go to my Plant Speak course and you see that it's online and you go through the different modules, here we are in 2023, and it's packaged in a certain way. And I like to package it in a way that it's accessible and neutral for everyone. I didn't create this idea. This has been around for hundreds of years. Our bodies, our intellect, our intelligence of our ancestors, it knows this. It's just finding a route for remembering. So, yes, I think we have it within us, our own innate wisdom to connect with nature. It's about helping people remember. So that's again, going back to that, what is my form of activism? Helping people to remember. How did I do it for many years with Reiki? I help people remember their light. Again, I'll go back to probably thinking this came from one of my first classes with you, Colleen, and that's the idea, we talk about it a lot, that visual of when we work with Reiki, there's that light within all of us. But the lampshades of human experience, sometimes it's hard to see your own light. And so when you work with Reiki, it can really help you, remove those or let them go or whatever it might be. I really think of that is part of the activism, and the plants can help in the same way. They can help you remember that light within. They can help you remove those layers. That's what I would love to bring to the world in this lifetime, is helping people remember, illuminating that light that's within each of us. That we're working through our own lampshades. I really feel like it's time for humanity to dive deeply into, I know that you guys have addressed this, both of you, in your work, and it's definitely, priority in my own work, and that's ancestral healing. And so I believe the combination of Reiki and the plants, you can very easily tap into those energetic lines. They're wonderful vehicles, wonderful offerings to help people dig in and do that ancestral work. I think there are many of us who are even get that lovely opportunity to revisit a lot of things that we thought we worked out, but that are deeply ingrained in our own ancestral patterns. And I feel like Spirit is saying, hey, it's really like, I want to tell you guys this again. It's really time to get rid of this now. Like, you've been given a lot of opportunity. Please, for the earth, for humanity, explore that. And I also like to start that way because it's big work. Let's start by exploring it. With Reiki, with journeying, with the support of the plants, let's go in and explore what that is. It can be very mysterious. And then you bring it to light, and then you can work on releasing it in a really beautiful and respectful way. And sometimes that's quick. And sometimes, it's a messy journey, like all of our healing. Yeah. But the plants are here to help.
Recently, plants were again starting to return to this. In other cultures, they still do, but that's what we use to heal. From like how you're saying, a spiritual standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint. That's right. What it's relatively recently that Western medicine has changed that. And, I'm not like advocating for one or the other. How do we combine it all? But right. in the journey to be to where we are with Western medicine, we've also lost in our Western culture, we've lost that element to it. And we are starting to return to how do we blend these? And, you're talking about past life, ancestral history. Many of us were persecuted for it in our past lives, in our ancestral history. And so there is that, that witch wound that we do have to heal, that the plants can help us heal. And as soon as you were talking about lavender and that, and, ancestral or past life healing, it took me immediately to a past life that I must have in the south of France. And that connection there. And I was like, oh, look at that. I mean, it was just direct to that memory, Yep. But there's all of that part of it as well that it's starting to wake back up within many of us that even it was a danger to continue to practice. Yeah,
we need to definitely, unravel that thought form that is so prominent. To be able to get rid of that fear would be very beneficial, and we all work on it in our own way. But I really, I also appreciate you mentioning the idea, I'm not an advocate for not using modern medicine. I am so very thankful. But like many things, it came with a cost. And I think very specifically when thinking about energy healing or working with the plants, what we gained in so many wonderful, we gained so many options, right? We thrust forward. If you can look at us, this has not been happening for very long, but so many scientific developments, so many gifts for us medically, but it also took us away from our wisdom. And that's, again, why I feel like blending energy medicine and the plants, it inherently is about coming back to your wisdom. And so we're navigating how to live in both worlds. We're navigating how we can come out of that dualistic mindset and go back to oneness and remember, trust ourselves. It's a fair amount of trust. Just like you would have someone that comes to you for an energy session, there's also a level of trust. Trust yourself, trust the plants. There's a lot of messaging in the last 100 years in particular in this dualistic world that tells us not to trust ourselves. So for me, that's a big part of this, is giving someone the opportunity to stand in that position. You can trust, and you're supported by Reiki. You're supported by an experienced practitioner. You're supported by the plants. You're supported by spirit. It's about giving opportunities.
Innate human wisdom. And I appreciate you calling it modern medicine. I want to correct what I said earlier, because it's modern medicine. It's all over the world, not just Western medicine. And going into, yes, we have this healing to do, but the gifts, and that's what you're talking about this whole time, is the gifts of us and our innate wisdom, and that remembering of how we live in communion with the earth, and the gifts of the plants, and the gifts of our knowledge that we know is in there, and bringing it back out. Gifts and talents of us.
Oh, and I will admit, in the last few years, it became, for me personally, and I think a lot of people in this sphere, it became very prevalent, very accessible. What were the wounds in this culture, in the world? What were the negative things that had been brought from our ancestors? And so for me personally, there was this big, I spent a lot of time thinking about the negative. And then, it came to me, my gosh, why? This is so common for humans. We're focusing on the negative. We need to be tapping into the gifts of our ancestors too. So that's very important. I had a client the other day who, we did both. I led them in a journey with plant medicine, with Reiki, to travel through their ancestral lines, first the mother line, then the father's line, and to ask to be shown the gifts and the challenges. And it was so illuminating for them in the particular issue that they came in for. It gave them so much information. And then for them to know that they can heal through time and space. And so as they shift, they're healing their ancestors and forward to their descendants. Yeah. I love our work so much.
Me too. Best. That's the best.
Yeah.
We get to have the best conversations too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm thrilled, Robyn, you mentioned it. I'm just thrilled that it's not a small circle of people anymore. People aren't just coming in crisis. People are coming for expansion. People are coming because they're curious. It's the world of energy medicine in all realms is just opening up. And okay, we did have that glitch of the pandemic, and we learned a lot of things. And now we're opening back up again in a different way. I think of the pandemic and how everyone moved to online. Well, that was sort of what we knew all along, right? We can work through time and space. Don't really necessarily need to be there, but wow, so many more people know that now. So how do we
at a deeper level?
Right? At such a deeper level, like many lessons for humanity, you don't really get to learn them in the most pleasant way, but there they are. And now how do we integrate that? What are we going to do with that? It's exciting. Yeah.
And innovate.
Colleen, I think of you with that word, innovation. It's such an important word.
It is. And it is something I like to think about is innovation. And, I do believe in, speaking of how this is becoming so much more mainstream and common. And, those of us that do have these conversations really are mainstream people. Yeah. And how much this matters that we're bringing this wisdom back today, reigniting this wisdom that we have as human beings and as the plants and as the earth providing for us. And the plants are, we provide for the plants. So it's not all of it is just so that human beings have it, obviously. Yeah. And so I think of it as the gifts that we have and that are now also being empowered from that ancestral history. And then we've been talking about also from the descendants, as we listen to the descendants out ahead of us for the knowledge they have that we can remember, because there's no time and space. We can tap into that too.
Yes.
And so I think we are at such a pivotal time when we go back to your, words of spiritual activism. It is what we can do, is empower these ways so they are remembered and developed and recreated in today's world the way that's relevant, but also making them available for the descendants.
Yeah. Something in your words, Colleen, made me remember this. I feel about Reiki in the same way. I wish that children were attuned to Reiki in kindergarten, right? That's just my, a goal in life would be that everyone has Reiki. And I similarly feel the same way about that plant relationship, that it's a household thing. Like, you don't need to do a big ceremony with plants. You don't have to have it be a big deal, but you can connect with the spirit of a plant. You could put a little sprig of rosemary on your windowsill to remind you of that plant medicine. They can just become a part of our everyday life. I think that's something else that I'm really appreciating seeing, is that we can bring it into our routine, into our daily. Doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just natural. It's natural that we would connect to ourselves and each other and the plants and the earth, that it doesn't have to be an extraordinary, unusual or separate ceremony, that we bring little mini ceremonies into our life. That you wake up and you get to smell a plant. Maybe it's an essential oil. Maybe it's out in your garden. Maybe you go out and smell rose, and that you connect to that. You feel the wisdom that, just like we would wake up and give ourselves a little Reiki each day, start your day, bring yourself home. It's just, that's my hope. That's my vision.
Well, I think I will definitely have I think I do have definitely a different perspective than I had at the beginning of our conversation, on a new level.
Yeah.
And healing some of that resistance to the actual oils. And like you say, looking at it, what is that? Why is that? Because I do believe in, like you said, with the animal Reiki, it's not just for animals. It's the recognition that we are here to be human beings. We are part of the earth, part of the circle of life, with the animals, with the plants, the trees, the wind, the waters, everything of the earth, the stones. We're all part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's building relationship.
Yeah. And communion.
Yes. Relationship, communion. In the online course that I have, that I'll work into the retreats this fall and really hope to focus on in 2024 completely, is I like to think about it as meeting a new friend. So maybe you have that oil, it's like maybe someone out, and there's a section that I call, it's your meet and greet with the oil. Like, you just have a few casual words, you exchange a little something, you give a little smell, and then that's it for now. And then just like with a friend, you might have a little deeper conversation. Like, you don't really get into the depths of a relationship immediately, although sometimes we do, but it's bring it into your awareness. Kind of touching base, maybe having that conversation like a cocktail sort of party conversation, but then you can go a little deeper. And that's the way I feel like we can work with the plants. And that's how the course is set up, into just first remembering, and then, and I ask people to go back into their childhoods when it was so easy to remember, when you were, laid out on a grass field and felt that oneness. Like, I ask people to go conjure up, they're in there. Those deep memories are in there for everyone. You have something to sort of enliven that, and then to start meeting them. And then as you work with it, that's when you can start really working like you do with every ally. then you build that relationship and that trust and that knowing, then you can really start working together. But it takes that communion. It takes opening your heart. And if there's one thing I've found, again, 100th time, with Reiki and with plants, is that it helps us open our heart. And there's all sorts of healings in that, right? When you're opening your heart. But it's heart medicine.
Mm,
Yeah, it's heart medicine.
I like that.
Mm. Well, tell us again how people reach you and where you are, and a little bit about what you offer.
Sure. Well, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, not too far from you two. And my main website is Almus Reiki, ALMUS, Almus Reiki. You can get to everything through that. The course on plants is at my second website called Plant Speak Courses. And I'm on Instagram as Plant Speak, and I have a Facebook page. So many different ways to connect. I would love to connect with any of you listeners. And this fall, I will be offering a few standard Reiki classes, a Reiki class for essential oil users, Reiki practitioners and essential oils. And then I'll have some separate retreats that are Plant Speak related. So they'll be working through that curriculum and really just teaching people how to connect with the spirit of a plant in a right and sacred way and help them remember. So, yeah.
So just quickly about the retreats, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I just booked my first retreat out by you guys, a little bit further in Welch's. So that's a Reiki nature retreat where we will have just the first attunement. It'll be Reiki 1, and then for the first day, and then the second and part of the third day, we'll be working with Reiki in nature. We'll be talking to the river and giving Reiki to the plants and all the different amazing things you can imagine. And so I hope to be offering that in the future. I'm very excited about that. And then the Plant Speak retreats will be a little bit longer. I'm hoping those will be 4 days. That's the plan right now. But all that will be on my website at the end of August. So if you want to come check it out, I would love to see you.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Judith, thank you so much. What a really enlightening conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I really learned a lot, and I feel like it's opened me to another whole, we've been calling it wandering and wondering. And so getting to wonder while I wander.
Yeah.
And I love that, just really that connection with the plants and communion with the plants, and then opening to the oils with the plants as well.
Wonderful. That makes me really happy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, and so for everybody else, of course, you can find Robyn and I at ReikiLifestyle.com. And I think that's good for today, right?
I think so. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Many blessings and lots of love.
Yeah. Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much, everyone. And Judith, just thank you. That was really good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.